All right, so this is going to be Dev Journal 2. I figured I'd change my ways and actually publish them on a regular basis instead of waiting months and months and months. So we have the prototype here for Brave New World Exodus. And this has been going on for 5 years. We actually have 12 complete builds, but we kept waiting and waiting for better features. And now that motion matching is out, we've got that in the start of our new build. And motion matching is just a really beautiful way of handling movement. Needs a lot of animations, but it does a really good job. Now, this particular version of the game animation sample, everybody calls it Gasp for short, is one that's called the Gasp ALS. And it's made by a group of guys that call themselves POLYGON HIVE. And I'll put links below the video for all the stuff I mentioned. Now, inside of this build, we are using Menu System Pro and Inventory System Pro, which I really like these guys. They do a lot of good work. They have a good sense of graphic design. I will say that you can't really use it without some modifications, but it's got a lot of good options. You can see here. And eventually all of these will all be properly hooked up and used by us. Now, the game animation sample has a parkour system, and it's actually been improved by Polygon Hive. But I have to say, eventually I'm going to replace this with like an Assassin's Creed style system. This system is good, but it really relies on pretty basic geometry. So complex geometry like this fort, it has some real problems with. So it's a great parkour system, but it's really designed for very simplistic shapes. So eventually I'm going to switch this out. I'm going to want something a little better. So let's take a look at Inventory System Pro. We got some props over here. You can see that you get a notification. They light up when you're near an object. If I hit E, it tells you what you grab the first time. So if I grab some bullets here for it, the first time you'll see the notification for the bullets. And then after that, it's just going to give them to you. So first time it gives a description, and after that, so it doesn't pester you, it allows you to just pick them up without a notification. Now, I'd like to say that unfortunately, some people might want to turn that off, and it's really not able to in the Inventory System Pro, not easily anyway, not without recoding a lot of stuff yourself. And that might be an issue for some people. For me personally, if I decide to get rid of it, I'll just go through the grief of getting rid of it. But overall, I have to say that everything here I'm really happy with. Now, you're going to have to make changes, though, to stuff. Like, for example, I'll load up the pistol. Now, the pistol system that they have, they're Blueprint developers, so the bullets use a Blueprint system. I would say that if you're going to make a full game, eventually you're going to want to switch that out with a C++ system. It's going to be a lot better for you. And it's going to handle a lot of players a lot easier. Now, in their system, it would only show bullet decals on static mesh objects, like this counter, for example. You couldn't like see the bullet hit the ground. You couldn't see it hit other players. Now, I changed that out for a system called Ballistic FX. Now, you notice that the weather's changing. And Ballistic FX is an interesting one that I'll leave a link for as well. Sadly, since Fab has come to be, a lot of devs have dropped out of the marketplace. And these guys that made Ballistics have dropped out as well. They're selling it privately, but they're not updating the version on Fab anymore. And the version on Fab was an alpha because this is a very old system that hadn't been updated in a while. It had some problems. I actually fixed those problems. So now it works. So now, no matter what we do as far as shooting goes, if it has a material, you can assign an effect to it. So, like if I shoot the ground, you can see here it has an effect. You shoot another player, blood will squirt out. You shoot the fort. Out of bullets, reload. So it's a much more dynamic system. And you want to do little stuff like that when you're making a game to connect things to the world. Otherwise, it feels artificial. You want to try to make that extra effort to have as much interaction as possible. So the next thing that I was wondering about, oh, and I should mention, this is actually using the UE5 skeleton. The system for Gasp allows you to use any different skeleton that UE supplies. They do a lot of retargeting and everything, but I noticed that because skeletons have different proportions, the retargeting wasn't always exact. And there's a lot of people going, well, how do you make the sockets line up on all the different skeletons? And there's a lot of people going through a lot of grief with that. I personally don't need that for the game. So I actually used a plugin called Skeleton Swapper and took a UE4 character and just removed its skeleton and replaced it with the new UE5 skeleton. And I'm probably just going to build a whole character line around the UE5 skeleton because of not having to retarget now. So we're saving CPU cycles by not dealing with that at all, which is kind of nice. So the other big question I had, because we learned blueprinting, the people that I work with, but we never really study animation blueprints that much. And we put it off and we put it off because we knew all these new systems were coming out, multi-threaded animation, then the game animation sample project with motion matching. And so it's actually just now that we're really getting into deeply studying animation blueprints. But one of the things I was wondering about was, can you just overwrite it? Like if you buy, say, a swim component, which is a product on Fab, can you just literally override the entire animation sequences that are going on and make it so you could swim? And it turns out you can. So took a little work. I bought the swim component, which was actually quite old. It's not actually for this version. So I went ahead and spent all night fixing the code so it would work, but it does work. So now we have swimming in the game. And that brings me to these fishies. This is called the Advanced Flock System, and it's again on Fab, and I'll give you, the link. But it's actually designed for single player, and this is a multiplayer game. So I'm hoping to convince the dev to add some multiplayer functionality to this. I'd like to be able to turn these fish off when no players are nearby. The other thing is I played with all his settings because they were all swimming around in a group. And I adjusted the settings and found out that I could do a really nice, just random group of fish. And I'd love to be able to have multiple types of fish. But this flock system actually only allows you per zone to use one type of fish. So I'd love to have him add an array where I could add 2 or 3 different types of fish. And they do auto detect and swim away from the player. It turned out to be a pretty nice system. So I'll just swim back to shore. So as far as weaknesses go with the inventory system, I will mention that the drop items setup is kind of boring. They just kind of appear. There's no effects. There's no noise. And I would rather actually have items drop. And again, have like when it hits the ground, have hitting sounds, or it drops on a table, you hear sounds hitting the table, which again reinforces the fact that the player is in a world that he can actually interact in. So I'll probably go through the trouble of stripping out their entire drop system and replace it. So I'm going to end this by taking a look at the melee weapons. Now, I changed the animation blueprint Polygon Hive did. They had it so you could play montages, which is an animation sequence, but they only had it set for full body. And the inventory system, like if you use a sword, it plays a montage that's a full body animation. And you couldn't do just like the upper body. And that's a problem. And they also stop the player from moving. So if you grabbed a sword, like one of these guys, and I'll just hit 2 to replace the pistol with the sword. Now, if I hit swing, it would move the whole body and stop the player from running forward. But we've made upper body, we've changed this so it works with the upper body. So now you can even jump and swing. Now, the reality of it is that you want to use both. Like, if the player's not moving, you want to do a full body animation. But as soon as he starts moving, you want to turn that full body animation off. And if he is moving, you want to just do the upper body animation. So there's actually a lot of complexity to melee combat. And I'll be improving and adjusting this as we go from build to build. But right now, it's a pretty good setup. And just put that away. Go on the other side here. Grab some arrows. Now, the effects that I did with bullets, excuse me, I also want to do with the melee weapons. So if you hit the fort, sparks will fly. If you hit a stone, rock chips will fly. So I'm going to have to take that system that I fixed and also implement it with separate effects for melee weapons as well. So you've got this little bow. You can see when the arrow hits, there's the arrow, shoots little rocks. There's the arrow stuck in the ground. So, a few improvements, but overall, these guys' products are really, really nice, and I really appreciate them, and I really like them. So, that's all of this devlog, and hopefully, I'll be better about this and not wait a year to publish the next one. And hopefully, you'll see one weekly from now on. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, we have a Patreon. We have a YouTube channel. I'd love to get some supporters. That would be very much appreciated. And you guys have a nice night.